It's important to proofread your work. Even professional writers check their work several times before they submit it. In this pod, we'll continue to look at how you can proofread your work accurately.
It's important to check over any literary techniques you've mentioned in your answer. This can include literary devices such as alliteration, onomatopoeia, character, and sibilance. Make sure you know the correct meaning of these words and that the example you've taken from the text is evidence of them. There's no point in saying the words happy family are an example of alliteration. They're clearly not. If you're uncertain about literary devices, be sure to check out our pod on the subject.
Check for any errors you know that you always make. You know the types of mistakes that crop up in your work better than anybody else. Don't let them get the better of you.
It's very important to check for grammatical as well as spelling errors. These are a little trickier, but with practice, you'll get there. One of the first things to check is that your tense is consistent. We use tenses to show whether things are happening in the past or present, and whether they're ongoing or finished. You should be writing in the same tense all the way through your answer. In most cases, this is the present tense. This means that you avoid adding ed to sentences. For example, you would write, Stevenson suggests that the weather is cold, and not, Stevenson suggested that the weather is cold. If you've alternated throughout your answer, switch it all to the present tense.
If you're writing a story, as opposed to an essay, you can choose your tense. However, don't mix two tenses up in your sentences. For example, you might say, the old man walked quickly down the road. He opened a gate and looked around him. If you wanted to use the past tense, in both of the sentences, the tense is consistent. You could choose to write this in the present tense by saying, the old man walks quickly down the road. He opens a gate and looks around him.
However, if you said, the old man walked quickly down the road, he opened a gate and looks around him, you would lose marks. This is because the sentence switches from past to present tense at the very end. Try to avoid these kind of errors.
Using the correct tense links on to another part of proofing, verb agreement. You have to make sure that a verb matches the subject. This sounds complicated, but it simply means that the verb you use makes sense given what has come before it. For example, you might say,
the writer suggests,
but you would never say,
the writer's suggests.
This looks and sounds a little strange. That's because the verb is not in agreement with what has come before it, the writers. In fact, the correct way to show this would be,
the writers suggest.
The verb itself can also sometimes change. For example, I open the gate is grammatically correct, but he opened the gate is not. You need to add an S to the verb to make the sentence read properly. He opens the gate.
Look over your sentences to make sure they're fully complete, especially in stories. A sentence needs a subject and a verb. Jane walked in the park is one example. You have Jane, the subject, and walked, the verb. If you said in the park on its own, it would not be a complete sentence.
Sometimes your sentences may be too long. Consider splitting sentences into two or breaking them up with punctuation if they stretch on for too long. Remember, each new thought or point needs to end with a full stop, question mark, or exclamation mark. A comma isn't enough to divide completely new ideas.
Check your writing in the way that suits you. If you're at home, reading aloud may help. If you're in an exam environment, reading each sentence in your head one by one could be key. Good luck!